Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at another example of a derivation in predicate logic. And this one will make use of the other rule, the other quantifier rule that's a little bit tricky, which is the rule of existential elimination. I say it's a little bit tricky because it has more restrictions than the other rules, but if you kind of think about what it means, you're not going to go wrong with it, okay? So this argument says, for everything in the domain or the universe of discourse, if it's F, then it's G, something is F, therefore something is G. And that should seem valid. That definitely sounds right. Because if something's F, and if everything is F, then it's G, then this same thing here that we're talking about here must be G as well. So it's true that something is G, and that sounds like it should be true on all interpretations. This should follow from these on any kind of interpretation that you can think of, or that could exist. So let's go ahead and see if we can get a derivation or a proof here. Now, there doesn't seem to be any direct way to get to here from here, but maybe think about what this says. It says if something is F, let's call it A. Let's say if A is F, well, if A is F, for everything, if it's F, then it's G. So in particular, if A is F, then A is G. Therefore, something is G. So how can we formalize that kind of reasoning? Well, we can use the rule of existential elimination. So existential elimination is the only rule quantifier rule that requires you to start a subderivation. But what we're doing is we're taking, obviously you have to have an existentially quantified sentence. And what you're doing is you're starting an assumption you're starting a subderivation where the assumption that starts that subderivation is an existentially quantified sentence with the quantifier taken off and the variable replaced with a constant. So for this, we would assume, say, FA. So assumed for purposes of existential elimination, because what we did is we eliminated the quantifier. We eliminated the existential quantifier. So why did I choose the letter A here? Well, there's some restrictions on the existential elimination. There's restrictions on what letters you can use, and the easiest way, or what constants you can use, and the easiest way to make sure that you follow those restrictions is just to always use a letter that's new to the proof, okay? So one that doesn't appear anywhere else in the proof. So here, A, there's no constants in this yet, so we can just start with A, okay? Now from here, this should be fairly simple. This is what we're trying to get to, all right? And if we can get that in this subderivation, then great, okay? So we have FA. Well, we know for everything, if it's F, then it's G. So in particular, if A is F, then A is G. And that's universal elimination on line 1. And that kind of illustrates why you always want to do your assumptions for existential elimination prior to doing your universal eliminations, because you want to use letters that are new to the proof for your existential eliminations. Otherwise, and so if you do this first, then if we'd done this first, we wouldn't have been able to use A here, we would have used B, and then this and this wouldn't have matched. We wouldn't have been able to use them together. And, okay, so now we have, if FA, then GA, and we have FA, so we can conclude GA here by lines 3 and 4, conditional elimination, okay? So we're trying to get this, and one thing now, we can't stop, there's no way to stop this and just pull GA out, okay? Because whatever it is that you conclude by existential elimination it can't still have the letter in it that you started the assumption with. Okay, that's not okay. There's a restriction on that prohibits that, and there's kind of a good reason for that, and that's because you're just kind of giving a name to something here. We know this thing exists, and we know something's f, and we're just kind of giving it a name here to keep track of it in the subderivation. So it wouldn't make any sense to go ahead and take that out of here. Okay, so but what we can do is this. We know that if A is G, then something is G. And now we've taken this constant out that we started with. So, sorry, that's existential introduction, line 6. Because we're adding an existential to line 5. That's existential introduction, line 5. Because we're adding an existential to line 5, and now we can close off the subderivation, and on lines 3 through 6, we got there is an x that is g. There's something that's g by existential elimination, lines 3 through 6. So again, the way existential elimination works is you start with an existentially quantified sentence, you begin a subderivation, and whatever you arrive at, you can take out. Okay, as long as you meet those restrictions on what letter you start with, and you don't end by taking that same letter out.